Stephen Kick. I'm the studio head of Nightdive Studios. And yeah, we're working on The Thing and Killing Time.
Larry Kuperman, Director of Business Development for Nightdive Studios. And what Steve said goes for me too.
Let's jump into Killing Time. When I saw PO revealed for the first time from you, I was like, that one? I was like, because like Nightdive has been on a tear, like doing some awesome remasters of things that people really, really love. Like we've had Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition, we've had System Shock, we've had I'm sorry, what was
Quake 2. We had that out, and Star Wars Dark Forces.
Mm-hmm. And that's just to name a few.
I will tell you, when I was asked about the art style for PO'd, I did say, well, it's no Star Wars Dark Forces.
and now we arrive at Killing Time, which is kind of another 3DO deep cut. And I'm kind of curious, just like off the top of my head, did y'all just like take a dig through the 3DO library and just start like, this one could be good? How did you move from PO'd into Killing Time here?
Well, originally we were looking into doing Killing Time like 5-6 years ago. That was kind of on our radar pretty early on, and we ran into some legal issues with that initially. And it wasn't until Ziggurat, I wouldn't call them a sister company exactly, but they had acquired all the rights.
Our partner in that.
Yeah, that's definitely more accurate. They're our partner in this release, but they had acquired all the rights and had kind of cleared all that up, and so it had come back to us in that way. And so we were kind of ready to work on it. We had already done some of the preliminary work on finding the source code and some of the assets. So it was just a matter of time, really, before we got our hands on it.
But PO'd completely separate, although coincidental and perhaps serendipitous. PO started out with Steve came to visit me in Las Vegas, coming in for DICE. I want to say not last year, but the year prior to that. And we went to one of the collectible stores here in Las Vegas, and sure enough, Steve found a copy of PO'd, which was a game that was near and dear to the heart of Sam Villarreal. So that kind of brought the topic up about PO'd, and then fast forward, some months past that, Sam's birthday is coming up, and Steve asked him what he wanted for a birthday present, and it was to do PO'd. It was to Kexify PO'd.
Yeah, he goes, can you go get the rights to that for me?
That's so cool. So it's just, that is straight up a passion project then.
It absolutely was. But I want to say about both games, TJ. I mean, it's a great question. People are going to ask why. And look, Nightdive has had a consistent mission throughout, which is to talk about games preservation and to bring the games back. It has always been about the games for us. And yeah, we know that PO probably was not going to make the list of top 10 most significant games in gaming history on anybody's list. Not in the top 100, maybe not in the top 1,000. But it's still a game that contributed to gaming history, and it did some pretty cool things. I think that you can see the sense of humor in PO'd. I'm not saying that it was the original, but I think you're going to see that same snarky, tongue-in-cheek style of humor about the game is something that passed on to more and influenced more modern and more classic titles.
It's an interesting point that you brought up before about the rights for Killing Time were in Ziggurat's hands. And it just so happens, like, for those who don't know the history, Atari owns Ziggurat, and at this point they've acquired Nightdive as well. So y'all are, wait, do I have that right?
I'm gonna say Wade Rosen, who is the CEO of Atari, is the principal investor in Ziggurat, but that is through Wade as Wade Rosen the person rather than as Atari.
Right.
So there is no direct. They're not under the Atari umbrella with us, but certainly there are points of commonality that we have.
Right, and that was kind of what I was going to get to, is that like this interesting set of connections kind of has made it possible for Killing Time to like happen under Nightdive at this point, hasn't it?
You're absolutely right, and it's not the first one. I mean, you mentioned Rise of the Triad. Rise of the Triad was a project that we had wanted to do also for years, but it took our partnership with Apogee and New Blood. And I think that's something interesting, that companies that are playing in the same space often work together. Often, we're really serious about the content and about the games, and so we're willing to, subordinate our own interests to produce the title.
And jumping into like the content of Killing Time, like this is another game that is kind of interesting, kind of pioneering. This game took a lot of stuff that was new and very young in technology at the time and mixed it into a first-person shooter. We're talking about like you've got the first-person shooting, but you also have a bit of puzzle solving. You have a bit of FMV, and
Yes.
It's just a lot of stuff coming together into one game. And how exciting is it to finally get like Killing Time into your hands, being able to apply like the Nightdive development style to it and fiddle with everything that's in there?
Well, the really interesting thing about Killing Time is that out of all the games that we've done over 10 years, it's had the most exhaustive, well-kept archive of assets that we've ever seen. So all the original movie clips that were filmed of the actors in costume that were primarily used for that FMV and for the enemy sprites, we have all that. And so the difference between the retail version that came out in, I think, 1995 or whenever it was first released, and the upcoming remaster is going to be night and day in terms of quality, just in terms of the presentation and how sharp and how clean all the assets are. And we don't often see that. We don't often even get the source code to games, but in this case, we have almost everything. And it's going to be a real treat for for Killing Time fans.
The other thing that comes up is and this was something that I said recently, but you can judge the importance of titles both from the immediate impact, how many people bought it, how many people played it, but also for the influence that it had. For there's always one game that does something for the first time, and then it becomes a thing that people, model after that. And some of these old titles really were groundbreaking.
When you look at the original Killing Time, when you look at what's out there right now, it's there's a lot of stuff in there that's very unique, very cool, but you can also see the dating on it. Like you can the FMV, not the best that I've seen, not the best that many have seen, but it's still in there. And with like all of these assets at your disposal and like this archive to work with, how much is Nightdive able to spruce it up past what it was?
Almost the entire game. It's wild. We've had to recreate a couple things that were missing from the archive, but not much. It's all in there, and whoever was responsible for backing all that up and making it available, I mean, they probably couldn't foresee that a company 30 years later would be going through it and rebuilding it, but I'm grateful for it. And
the Kex engine it's been so good for so many games. Like when I was playing through Star Wars Dark Forces, I loved that game when I was a kid, but like being able to actually like look up and down easily, being able to like fiddle with the controls easily, being able to like seeing how crisp those sprites looked, it was incredible. And like, has there been, what would you say is like the biggest challenge as the team approaches these older games, like these games that may not have full archives available? And what is the biggest challenge behind taking something and like bringing it up to Nightdive level of quality?
That's a really good question. Both our engineering and our art teams are incredibly talented, and they've definitely gone through the gauntlet of 90s FPSs, so they understand like what makes the game feel good, what kind of things can be added in to make it feel even better, or to just make it more presentable or kind of appetizing to a modern audience. And I think it's definitely a blend of those things, like getting the movement feeling nice, getting the controls to feel responsive, having the art look good on a 4K screen because that's what everybody has now. And then just finding a balance between those things and making sure that it doesn't go too far in terms of losing what made the original so special. And it's a fine line to balance for every game because they're so different from one another. But I think that we've done a really good job of understanding like what it is that made those games what they were and why they endure. And then being able to also shine a light on what they represented and what they offered to the industry, so that both old fans and new fans can find a lot of enjoyment in them.
Out of curiosity, if you can talk about this, or if it's a little too early yet, like when it comes to Killing Time itself, I want to ask, like, what is your favorite upgrade that you've assembled for this game so far? Like, what are you most excited for people to see when they see Killing Time?
Well, I think one of the biggest complaints, and so this is another thing that the team actually really enjoys doing, is going back and reading old reviews for the game and getting a better idea of what even back then caused problems or bugs, that type of thing, or frustrations that reviewers had with the experience. And for Killing Time explicitly, I think it was the level design. It's okay. It's not the best. It can get a little confusing. And so we actually brought in a level designer to come in and reevaluate some of those problem areas that were identified even when it originally came out, and kind of smooth it out so that it's not as frustrating. It's still there. The foundation of the level design and the intention of that level is still present, but it's just the rough corners have been smoothed out. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that people see and appreciate from the Nightdive team. But also, I mean, I can't wait for you to see the difference between the sprites from the original and what we have now. They look totally different. Unrecognizable almost.